They were already moving when the light came. Small, upright shadows slipping through tall grass, the scent of wet soil and crushed leaves on their knuckles. A storm had raked the savannah before dawn and left a necklace of puddles along a dry riverbed. The band of early hominins, broad-browed, short-faced, more comfortable half-standing than knuckle-walking, fanned out with purpose. One juvenile waded to a puddle, folded a handful of broad leaves into a trembling bowl, and lifted water to a new mother who cradled her slick, mewling infant against her chest. The old female, scarred and steady, placed a bitter leaf at the mother's lips. The taste made her grimace, but her belly stopped its cramping. They moved again. The wet wind carried a signal. A high wheel of vultures, cutting circles above the plain. The band's high-shouldered male paused, nostrils flaring. He slung a fist-sized stone from one hand to the other and grunted through his teeth, tilting his head toward the birds. The old female answered with motion, 2 quick taps on a fallen branch, and the group angled toward the promise of meat. In the grass, they found it. A young antelope, ribs lifted like broken fingers, felled by last night's lightning and abandoned by the jackals when the rain came. There was no ceremony, only need. The juvenile pried at the hide with a sharp-edged rock. The old female steadied the carcass with both feet and levered bone with a heavy cobble. Fibers snapped, wet heat blossomed, and the band pressed closer. The high-shouldered male cracked a long bone against a larger stone. The marrow glistened pale, and they scooped it with their tongues, eyes bright. Fat slicked their faces. The infant, still slick with birth, rested warm against the mother's chest, the drum of her heart loud as thunder. From the grass came a ripple, movement not their own. Another band emerged, a rival troop with the same forward gaze and heavy brow, leaner and hungry. They froze at the scent of the kill, then crept, shoulders rolling, palms full of stones. The air tightened like a drawn bow. The high-shouldered male stepped wide and bared his teeth, lifting his cobble high, while the old female tapped the ground. A rhythm that meant hold, but be ready. A thin, scarred rival closed the distance and thrust a hand toward the marrow. The high-shouldered male answered with sound, chest drumming, low and booming. For a breath, it seemed to work. Then the wind shifted, and with it, the sky. Clouds heaped into iron walls and drove a second storm across the plain. The first cold drops struck like thrown seeds. The rival troop lunged. A flurry of bodies met, stone to stone, fang to knuckle. The juvenile yelped and dropped his cutting rock. The old female planted her feet and hammered a rival hand away, then shoved marrow-cracked bones into a woven screen of grass to save them from the mud. Lightning stitched the horizon. Thunder rolled a warning deeper than hunger. Rain sheeted down, crushing the grass flat, turning dust to slick clay. The carcass slid, the vultures lifted, and the riverbed below them began to fill with a crawling brown mirror. Both bands startled as one when the first white surge licked the banks. The fight peeled apart, not from truce, but from fear. The high-shouldered male barked with his shoulders, up, up, and the band staggered toward higher ground, each adult taking a turn to shield the new mother and infant with hunched backs. The rival troop darted downslope, greed diverting them toward a still pool where the last scraps of meat had washed. In the next heartbeat, the pool wrinkled with the long, slow smile of a crocodile. The rival with the scar reached, the water erupted, jaws clapped bone, limbs thrashed, red braided into brown. The old female's mouth opened in a silent cry, and the band moved faster, grass slapping their shins. Behind them, the river was now a roaring living thing, rolling logs and carcass and the stones they had used like toys. They found a basalt shoulder rising from the plain and scrambled onto it, rain slicking their backs. For a breath, the world narrowed to wet heat and the pounding of blood. Then, through the sheets of water, another shape, a low, tawny ripple stalking the slope. The saber-tooth, whiskers beaded, gaze steady. It paced along the rock's flank, reading fear like scent, choosing the smallest and the slowest. The infant, barely hours old, squeaked. The cat's head turned on a hinge. There was no time for voice. The old female moved first, straightening to her full, improbable height, and lifted a heavy stone with both hands. The high-shouldered male matched her, and the others followed, forming a crescent around the mother and child. The cat tested the edge, a whispering glide, paws soft as dusk. The old female hurled the stone. It struck the slope and shattered into flakes, one of which sprang sharp as a tooth. The juvenile snatched it, eyes round, and slashed his palm open accidentally. Bright blood slicked the flake. He hissed and clenched his fist, then pressed the sharp edge into a crevice to wedge it secure, a tiny trap where fur might pass. The cat lunged. Bodies erupted. Stones fell like hail upon a single point, spine, shoulder, muzzle. The high-shouldered male slammed his cobble into the cat's nose. The cat recoiled, jaws flaring. The juvenile dove, arms wide, and the cat's ankle struck the wedged flake. It yowled, surprised by the sudden bite from the stone itself. That surprise was everything. The old female drove another rock downward, weight behind it. Bone cracked. The cat twisted, angling for escape, and slid away down the wet slope. A streak of red drawn after it, then vanished into the veils of rain. They did not cheer. They breathed. The storm burned itself to mist. The river's roar softened. The band sagged in relief, a cluster of damp, trembling chests and bright eyes. The old female took the juvenile's bleeding hand and pressed a wad of crushed bitter leaf into the wound. His face tightened, then released as the sting ebbed. The new mother held her infant higher, letting the warm gray light touch its closed eyes. The high-shouldered male gathered the shattered stones, turned them in his palms, and chose one newly sharp, testing it against a fiber of grass with a thoughtful tilt of his head. Around them, the savannah breathed steam, and birds sketched tentative paths back into the sky. Hunger returned, patient and insistent. They descended cautiously. The carcass was gone. The river had claimed it, but the storm had torn up roots along the banks. The band fell to their knees, digging with stones and fingers, prying sweet tubers from the softened earth. The infant slept through the soft grunts and the steady rhythm of work. When the sun pushed through the last curtains of cloud, they found a wind-fallen branch, heavy with comb. The old female waved smoke from smoldering grass and eased the honey free without angering the bees. They ate sticky and laughing, eyes soft, shoulders touching. By dusk, the river had shrunk to a brown ribbon, and the savannah glittered with droplets like 1,000 eyes. The band gathered what they had: stones that cut, leaves that healed, memories of where water hid after storms, and began to move, a patient caravan along the ridge. Behind them, vultures returned to a different feast. Ahead, the land rolled away in gold and shadow. They traveled in a loose ring around the mother and child, each taking a turn at the outer edge, stones ready. The day had begun with hunger and thunder and strangers, and it ended with the band intact, scraped, smarter, bound by the taste of honey and the heat of one another. When night drew its black bowl over the plain, they tucked into a shallow cave above the river's whisper. The old female leaned against the cool wall and closed her eyes. The high-shouldered male placed the sharpest flake near the mouth of the cave, where paw or claw would have to pass. The new mother pressed her lips to her infant's crown, breathing its faint, milky smell. In the dark, their chests rose and fell in a kind of shared rhythm, the small drum of the future beating quietly within it. Tomorrow would be hunger again. Tomorrow would be tools and storms and other eyes watching. But tonight, the lesson held: stand upright when you must, hold close what is fragile, and move forward together.